The Great Cartwheel Catastrophe. The sun smirked down at him, a brassy glare scorching the meager lawn, practically begging him to come out and make a fool of himself. Leo, usually a happy hermit amidst the pages of a book, was seized by a restless impulse. His recent reading about supple gymnasts, bodies contorting into gravity-defying shapes, had planted a seed of preposterous ambition. He would execute a cartwheel. Stretching his limbs, he felt a ludicrous sense of purpose inflate within him. He hadn't attempted such a feat since childhood, and even then, they'd resembled more flailing flops than graceful maneuvers. Gathering his courage, he recalled something about grounding his palms and propelling his legs skyward. His initial effort was a humiliating failure. He careened off course, his grip failing him on the slick grass, and he collapsed in an awkward heap. He forced a laugh, a brittle sound that shattered the afternoon stillness. "Just need to recalibrate," he mumbled, more to himself than anyone. He tried again. This time, he achieved a fleeting sense of lift, his legs momentarily scissoring in the air. Then, his left arm betrayed him, the limb folding like a discarded tent pole. A jolt of searing agony ripped up his arm as he met the earth once more. No laughter this time, only a thin, involuntary keen that pierced the air. His vision blurred, the sun transforming from a mocking presence into a scorching brand against his skin. "Mom," he croaked, the cry fracturing on a wave of pain. The back door burst open, his mother's face etched with worry. "Leo! What happened?" He attempted to rise, but the pain intensified, a relentless pulse. I think I've broken my arm." The subsequent minutes dissolved into a whirlwind of anxious inquiries, careful hands probing his injured limb, and the urgent ride to the emergency room. Hunched in the passenger seat, Leo's face was ashen, fighting the urge to move. Pain throbbed, a relentless companion, and fear gnawed at his insides. He loathed hospitals. The antiseptic tang, the subdued murmurs, the pervasive air of crisis, it set his teeth on edge. The waiting room was a tableau of human suffering. A small boy with a gashed forehead howled in his mother's embrace. A frail woman with a persistent cough clutched a wad of tissues. A nauseating wave threatened to engulf Leo. He squeezed his eyes shut, attempting to deafen himself to the sounds and blind himself to the sights. His mother squeezed his hand. "It's all right, darling. You'll be fine." He yearned to believe her, but dread sat like a stone in his gut. In his mind's eye, he saw the doctors, their faces obscured by masks, prodding and manipulating his fractured limb. He envisioned the cast, a heavy, clumsy shackle, a constant testament to his own ineptitude. After what seemed an eternity, a nurse's voice sliced through the air. "Leo Maxwell." He rose, his legs unsteady. His mother placed a hand on his back, gently urging him forward. As he shuffled down the sterile corridor, the buzzing fluorescent lights overhead, he felt as though he were crossing a threshold into a different realm, a domain of ache and uncertainty. He wished he'd stayed inside, lost in the world of his book. He wished he'd never harbored the fleeting thought of a cartwheel. A familiar face. Leo swallowed hard, the metallic tang of anxiety coating his tongue. The fluorescent lights of the examination room hummed, a discordant symphony to his racing heart. He hated hospitals. The sterile smell, the hushed whispers, the constant threat of needles, it all conspired to make him a jittery mess. He squeezed his eyes shut as Dr. Albright, a man whose smile seemed surgically attached, began poking and prodding his arm. "Just a little pressure here, Leo," Dr. Albright said, his voice devoid of any genuine warmth. Leo winced. "Tell me if it hurts." Of course it hurt. It felt like 1,000 tiny gremlins were tap dancing on his ulna. He mumbled a noncommittal noise, desperate for the ordeal to be over. He opened his eyes, focusing on a poster depicting various bone structures. Anything to distract himself. That's when he saw her. Across the room, near a supply cart, stood a woman with warm brown eyes and a kind smile that crinkled at the corners. It took him a moment, his brain sluggish with pain and nervousness, but then it hit him. Maya. His brother, Ben's, ex-girlfriend. He hadn't seen her in, 2 years? Since the infamous Thanksgiving debacle that ended their relationship in a flurry of mashed potatoes and passive-aggressive digs. Leo's breath hitched. What were the odds? Of all the hospitals, in all the city. He must be hallucinating. Maybe the pain meds they'd given him were kicking in. He blinked, and she was still there, adjusting the strap of her face mask. She was wearing scrubs, a name tag clipped to her chest. Nurse Maya Rodriguez. He felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Relief, surprise, and a hefty dose of awkwardness. He hadn't spoken to Maya since the breakup, and the thought of facing her now, in this vulnerable state, made his stomach churn. But then, she looked up, and their eyes met. Recognition flared in her gaze, followed by a genuine, welcoming smile. Leo. Leo Maxwell, is that you? She asked, her voice soft and melodic, cutting through the sterile hum of the room. He managed a weak nod, his cheeks flushing. She excused herself from the other nurse she was talking to and approached him, her steps light and quick. Wow, it's been ages. What happened? She gestured towards his arm, her expression concerned. Tripped, fell, he mumbled, feeling like a complete idiot. Maya chuckled softly. Well, you certainly picked the right place to do it. Let's see. She glanced at the X-ray displayed on the illuminated screen. Looks like a clean break. Nothing too serious, but definitely needs a cast. Dr. Albright will set it, and you'll be good as new in a few weeks. Think of it as an excuse to binge-watch all those shows you've been meaning to catch up on. Her calm, reassuring tone was a balm to his frayed nerves. She explained everything in simple terms, avoiding the medical jargon that usually made him feel even more clueless. He even managed a small smile. Thanks, Maya, he said, the tension easing from his shoulders. It's good to see you. More than good, actually. Seeing a familiar face in this sterile, intimidating environment was incredibly comforting. Whispers of the past. Maya's touch was gentle, a feather-light dance of antiseptic wipe and gauze against the throbbing ache in Leo's arm. He watched her, the afternoon sun catching the gold flecks in her brown eyes. They were kind eyes, worried now as she secured the bandage. All better, for now. Just try not to swing it around like a windmill, okay? He mumbled an agreement, suddenly hyper-aware of the space between them, filled with the scent of her lavender lotion and something else, something familiar. It was a ghost of Sam's aftershave, maybe, clinging to the air. A phantom reminder. Sam. Leo hadn't seen him smile properly since Maya wasn't around anymore. He remembered the strained politeness at dinner, the way Sam's eyes seemed to stare past him, focused on some distant, unseen point. The forced cheerfulness felt like a fragile mask, threatening to crack at any moment. Leo had tried to ask him what was wrong, but Sam had just ruffled his hair and said, "Nothing you need to worry about, kiddo." He winced, not from the pain in his arm, but from the memory of Sam's quiet sadness. It hung in the air like a low fog, dampening everything. He pictured them together, Sam and Maya. A slideshow of imagined moments flickered behind his eyelids. Sam, actually laughing, a genuine, unguarded sound, as Maya recounted some story about her chaotic family gatherings. Maya, patiently explaining something complex to Sam, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Sam, his usually stoic face softening as he looked at her. They had seemed right. Perfect, even. What had gone wrong? Leo had never dared to ask. It felt like treading on sacred ground, a place he wasn't allowed to enter. He'd always just assumed what? That they'd be together forever. That was stupid. Nothing lasted forever. Except maybe the ache in his arm. He watched Maya gather the first aid supplies, her movements precise and economical. She caught him staring. Something on your mind, Leo? He shook his head, a lie that felt heavy on his tongue. The question burned in his throat, a silent plea, why, Maya? Why did you leave? But the words wouldn't come. He was afraid of the answer, afraid of what it might reveal about Sam, about Maya, about the fragile, shifting landscape of relationships. He just shrugged, offering a weak smile. Thanks for fixing me up. She smiled back, a sad, knowing kind of smile. Anytime, Leo. But the smile didn't reach her eyes. They remained shadowed, holding secrets he couldn't decipher, whispers of a past he didn't understand. Colorful bandages and funny stories. The room's clinical pallor softened a touch when Maya swept in, her smile a personal sunrise. She carried a small, rustling paper bag. Surprise, she declared, dragging a chair close. Leo shifted against the pillows, a grimace flickering across his face as his arm pulsed with its now familiar ache. Another culinary masterpiece from the kitchen, he managed, hoping for levity. A warm, lilting laugh escaped her. Worse. Just kidding. I did liberate an extra pudding cup, but this is far superior. From the bag, she produced a small box crammed with bandages, not the standard issue beige, but ones emblazoned with cartoon heroes, jungle animals, even miniature pizzas. Bandages with personality? Leo asked, intrigued. I noticed you constantly fiddling with the plain ones, Maya explained, amusement crinkling the corners of her eyes. Consider it a delightful distraction. Besides, she winked, they're infinitely cooler. He chuckled, accepting the box with his uninjured hand. The bandages felt slick and new. He chose one bearing a tiny, azure citation. Thanks, Maya. This is, genuinely sweet. A warmth bloomed within him, quite apart from the throbbing in his limb. It was nothing, she demurred, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. She then launched into a recap of her day, recounting tales of a patient convinced he was a closeted race car legend, and another who'd stashed her dentures under her pillow. Maya's narration was animated, her hands sculpting shapes in the air as she delivered the anecdotes. She even nailed an unexpectedly spot-on imitation of the race car driver's accent. Leo was utterly absorbed. The discomfort faded, the ennui dissipated, even the antiseptic tang of the hospital seemed to recede. He simply listened, captivated by the play of expressions across her face, the light dancing in her eyes when she laughed, the delicate curve of her mouth. And then, Maya went on, Dear Mrs. Henderson, the denture hider, proclaims, they're safer there, love. Those pesky fairies will nab them from the nightstand, you know. A genuine, hearty laugh erupted from Leo. A cathartic sound. Catching Maya's gaze, a soft, almost tentative smile gracing her lips, a curious tremor sparked in his chest. A feeling long dormant, difficult to define, yet one he fervently hoped would linger. You can't imagine how much I anticipate these visits, he blurted, the words tumbling out before he could censor them. He instantly regretted the impulsive confession, fearing he'd overstepped, but Maya merely smiled, a shade wider now. Me too, Leo, she replied softly. Me too. A glance at her watch. Oh, blast, I have to dash. But I'll be back tomorrow, all right? And perhaps, she added, her eyes alight with mischief, I'll smuggle in more contraband pudding. Watching her depart, Leo was struck by the almost symbolic significance of the little blue whale now adhered to his arm. He was already looking forward to her return, mentally ticking off the minutes until he could once more hear her laughter, lose himself in her stories, and feel that strange, exhilarating tremor resonate within him. Awkward encounters. The antiseptic smell hit Sam first, a sterile wave crashing over him as he stepped off the elevator onto the 4th floor. He clutched the small bag of Leo's favorite gummy bears, a peace offering for his absence. He hadn't meant to leave Leo alone so much, but work had been relentless. He found Leo propped up in bed, a maze of tubes and wires snaking around him. He looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable. But the sight of Maya sitting beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, stopped Sam dead in his tracks. "Sam! You made it," Leo said, his voice a little too loud, a little too eager. Maya looked up, her eyes widening slightly. A flicker of something, surprise? Regret? Crossed her face before she masked it with a warm, practiced smile. "Sam. Hi. Leo was just telling me about your new project." "Maya," Sam managed, the word feeling stiff and foreign on his tongue. His carefully constructed composure threatened to crumble. He hadn't seen her since. Well, since it ended. Badly. He hadn't realized how much the memory of her still stung. The air thickened, heavy with unspoken words and lingering emotions. The cheerful yellow of the hospital walls seemed to dim. He could practically taste the awkwardness, acrid and unpleasant. Leo, ever attuned to the emotional currents swirling around him, shifted uncomfortably. "Maya's been amazing, Sam. She brought me books and we've been playing cards." He gestured vaguely with his good arm. Sam forced a smile. "That's good." He moved further into the room, placing the gummy bears on the bedside table with a deliberate thud. He avoided Maya's gaze, focusing instead on the rhythmic beeping of a machine monitoring Leo's heart. "I should probably go," Maya said, her voice soft. "I need to check on my other patients." She squeezed Leo's arm gently. "Get some rest." "Thanks, Maya," Leo said, his eyes following her as she moved towards the door. As she passed Sam, she paused for a fraction of a second, her fingers brushing his arm. "It was good to see you, Sam," she murmured, her voice barely audible above the hum of the machines. Then, she was gone. The silence that followed was deafening. Sam could feel Leo's eyes on him, questioning, probing. He knew he couldn't avoid it. He just didn't know what to say. The gummy bears suddenly felt heavy in his stomach. He wished he'd brought flowers instead. Or maybe just stayed away. Crushes and confessions, sort of. The aroma of antiseptic mingled with the cloying sweetness of the hospital's air freshener, a nauseating cocktail Leo was growing accustomed to. He sat hunched over a half-finished crossword puzzle, the grid blurring slightly as his mind drifted, not for the first time that day, to Maya. "Daydreaming again, Romeo?" Max's voice sliced through the quiet ward, pulling Leo back to reality with a jolt. Max, perched precariously on the armrest of his chair, grinned, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Leo's cheeks flushed. "I wasn't daydreaming. Just thinking. Thinking about Maya, right? The one who brings you extra juice boxes and always remembers your name." Max waggled his eyebrows. "Come on, Leo, spill. You've got it bad." Leo stammered, his face burning hotter. "I do not. She's just nice. She's nice to everyone." He avoided Max's gaze, focusing intently on the crossword. 7 letters, lack of enthusiasm. Apathy. He scribbled it in, the letters shaky. "Nice is one thing. But the way she looks at you. The way you practically drool whenever she's around. That's not just nice, buddy. That's called a crush." Max hopped down from the armrest and sauntered closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Don't worry, I won't tell. But admit it. You're smitten." "I'm not smitten." Leo insisted, his voice rising slightly. He glanced around, hoping no one else had overheard. Mrs. Higgins, across the room, was engrossed in her knitting, oblivious. He lowered his voice. "She's been through a lot. She doesn't need some lovesick patient mooning over her." Max raised his hands in mock surrender. Okay. Relax. But seriously, Leo, don't overthink it. It's okay to like someone. Especially someone who's, actually nice to us inmates here." He clapped Leo on the shoulder, a gesture that felt surprisingly heavy. After Max left to harass the nurse's station for extra pudding, Leo stared at the crossword, the letters now a meaningless jumble. Had he been that obvious? Did Maya notice? The thought was mortifying. He replayed their interactions in his head, searching for evidence of his supposed infatuation, analyzing her smiles, her tone of voice. He usually loved being around her, but now, he felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. Everything suddenly felt self-conscious, staged. He pictured her bringing him his next juice box, the casual touch of her hand on his, and felt a surge of something. Was it happiness? Or just the pathetic flutterings of a crush? He sighed, pushing the crossword aside. Maybe Max was right. Maybe he was smitten. And maybe, just maybe, that was a problem. He caught his reflection in the window, a pale, anxious face staring back. He scrubbed at his cheeks, trying to erase the blush that stubbornly remained. He had to get a grip. He couldn't let his, whatever it was, complicate things for Maya. Especially not now. Activity Day Adventures. The astringent tang of disinfectant was especially sharp that day, a stark reminder of the cast encasing Leo's forearm. He sank into the waiting room's worn chair, flipping through a tattered magazine until a splash of brilliant color snagged his attention. Maya was tacking up a poster, Activity Day. Fun, arts, and crafts for young patients. What's this all about? Leo asked, pushing himself upright. Maya's face lit up with a radiant smile. We're trying to combat the clinical atmosphere. It's mainly for the little ones, but open to anyone who needs a distraction. She indicated a list brimming with playful options: face painting, the delicate art of origami, and a design your own superhero corner. Leo's thoughts began to wander, a whimsical scenario of himself, a caped crusader against hospital boredom, rescuing fair maidens from monotony. He snapped back, a faint blush warming his cheeks. Sounds interesting. Need a hand? The words escaped before he could fully consider them. Maya's grin widened, genuine delight shining in her eyes. Seriously? That would be incredible. I'm stretched thin, juggling everything. And just like that, Leo was enlisted. The hospital's recreation room the following day was a hive of vibrant, joyous pandemonium. Children, some sporting plaster casts like his own, gathered around tables overflowing with glitter, pipe cleaners, and brightly colored construction paper. Maya, a beacon of good humor and endless forbearance, navigated the cheerful chaos with effortless grace. Leo, to his own surprise, discovered he enjoyed the orchestrated bedlam. He assisted a small girl whose unicorn horn refused to stand tall, patiently guided a boy through the intricacies of folding an origami crane, and even managed a clean getaway from any glitter-related mishaps. He caught Maya observing him, a gentle smile gracing her lips. "You're a natural," she said, her voice a soft murmur against the cheerful uproar. "Just preventing total meltdown," he quipped, earning a giggle from a boy nearby, struggling to adhere feathers to a cardboard mask. The afternoon evaporated in a blur of creative energy. As the clock neared 5, the room gradually emptied. Leo was helping Maya tidy away the remaining materials when Sam materialized in the doorway. "Hey, Leo. Ready to head out?" Sam's gaze swept across the space, absorbing the traces of the day's joyous activities. His eyes then settled on Maya. She looked up, her smile momentarily subdued. "Hi, Sam." Leo witnessed a subtle change in his brother's demeanor. The usual guardedness vanished, replaced by a vulnerable, almost exposed expression. He noted the way Sam's gaze lingered, captivated by Maya's animated features as she recounted the tale of Max Jenkins's ambitious attempt to turn his face entirely cerulean. A narrative involving a boy, the color of the sky, and the resulting tumult in the superhero zone. A silent acknowledgement that this small group held a closeness Sam craved. Sam swiftly regained control, resuming his composed facade. "We should probably go. Mom's made lasagna. Right, Leo replied, gathering his belongings. He glanced back at Maya, a silent thank you exchanged between them. As they departed, he couldn't shake the image of Sam's face, the fleeting glimpse of something authentic, something perhaps already lost. A little push. The sterile scent of antiseptic stung Leo's nostrils as he trailed after Sam, his arm throbbing a dull ache. Sam marched ahead, his jaw tight, a familiar sign of inner turmoil. Leo knew that look. It usually preceded a lecture about responsibility, or the importance of flossing. Today, though, Leo suspected it was about Maya. "She's really nice, you know," Leo blurted out, halting Sam in the middle of the hallway. Sam sighed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Leo, we've been over this. She's a colleague. Nothing more. But she brought me juice. And a blanket. And she didn't even make fun of my cast," Leo protested, his voice rising slightly. He fiddled with the edge of his sling, suddenly self-conscious. "She's understanding. Like she gets it." Sam's expression softened, a flicker of something akin to guilt crossing his face. "I know, Leo. She's good at her job." Leo rolled his eyes. "That's not what I meant. You should talk to her, Sam. Really talk." Sam's shoulders slumped. "There's nothing to talk about. It's over. Remember?" "But is it, really?" Leo pressed, emboldened by a surge of brotherly protectiveness. "Or are you just being stubborn?" Sam stared at him, speechless for a moment. "It's complicated, Leo. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," Leo challenged, though a knot of anxiety tightened in his stomach. He was walking on thin ice. Sam hesitated, then glanced down the hall. Maya was just emerging from a patient's room, her face etched with a weariness that tugged at Leo's heart. "Look," Leo said quietly, nudging Sam gently with his good arm. "Just say something. Anything. You can't just pretend she doesn't exist." Sam swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. The color drained from his face, leaving him looking pale and uncertain. He took a deep breath and walked towards her, his gait stiff and unnatural. Leo hung back, his heart pounding in his chest. He watched as Sam approached Maya, stopping a few feet away from her. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he saw Maya's eyebrows lift in surprise, then soften. A small, tentative smile touched her lips. Leo's own lips curved into a hopeful grin. Maybe, just maybe, he'd given them a little push in the right direction. Blue cast and second chances. The hospital cafeteria's overhead lights, buzzing like trapped wasps, smeared a jaundiced tint across the room. Leo worried the straw of his juice box, its paper wrapper whispering under his fidgeting fingers. A throbbing pulse radiated from his blue cast, an offensive cerulean against his pallid skin, a constant, dull ache. Across the bustling space, near the window framing bare, wintry branches, Sam and Maya were deep in conversation. Not the polite pleasantries he was used to, but a real exchange. Sam, usually a fortress of stoicism, displayed a hesitant smile that softened his features. He even gestured, his shoulders finally losing their habitual tension. Maya, leaning in with palpable interest, her dark eyes luminous, absorbed every word, punctuating Sam's sentences with gentle nods and knowing smiles. Leo observed them, a tangle of conflicting feelings twisting within him. Initially, he'd been consumed by fantasies woven around Maya, ephemeral daydreams of a connection that, in hindsight, felt more like adulation than affection. He'd been drawn to her quiet strength, her compassion. Now, witnessing her with Sam, a shift occurred. He saw how Sam's usual guardedness melted under her gaze, how the worry lines bracketing his mouth seemed to fade. He noticed the genuine warmth in Maya's expression, the almost telepathic way she anticipated and smoothed over Sam's infrequent stumbles. It felt right, somehow. A fleeting memory surfaced, Maya patiently elucidating the rules of a complex board game, her hand briefly resting on his shoulder, guiding his piece. He'd misinterpreted her kindness, projecting his own yearnings onto her. It wasn't personal. It was simply her inherent gift for connection, her ability to make anyone feel valued. The throbbing in his arms seemed to recede, replaced by a burgeoning sense of warmth in his chest. He was genuinely pleased for them. For Sam, who deserved someone who could see beyond his gruff exterior. For Maya, who deserved someone who cherished her boundless empathy. He drained his juice box, the sugary liquid coating his palate. He'd inadvertently played matchmaker. He'd brought them together, unconsciously engineering a connection he hadn't even imagined. And that, he realized with a surprising surge of contentment, was perfectly acceptable. More than that, actually. He pushed himself up from the molded plastic chair, gingerly maneuvering to protect his caste. He needed to show them he was doing fine, to offer his awkward, stumbling congratulations. Approaching them, he held up his arm, the vibrant blue a beacon in the muted environment. "Feast your eyes," he announced, his voice cracking with a mix of nerves and genuine excitement. "The doc says I'll be pitching strikes before you know it." He grinned, a wide, unreserved smile that brightened his entire face. He'd gladly endure the broken bone, the monotonous physical therapy, even the garish blue cast, if it meant his brother finally found happiness.